As President Biden tries to bounce back from what the White House calls a bad night, former President Donald Trump is having a pretty good week. On Monday, the Supreme Court ruled former presidents have immunity from prosecution for official acts when they were president. That led to the sentencing in his New York case being delayed until September. Then his campaign reported hauling in $331 million in the second quarter, almost $70 million more than the Biden campaign. And just in past few minutes, former President Trump now has a 6-point lead over President Biden in a new Wall Street Journal poll. That's his biggest lead in that survey in more than 2 years. Let's bring in Caroline Sunshine, Trump 2024 Deputy Communications Director. Caroline, thanks for being here. Let me just get you to digest what has happened since Thursday and how the campaign views it right now.
Well, Brett, I would tell you, I think the American people who watched the debate to end all debates wish that the election was today and that they could cast their vote for President Donald J. Trump and get Joe Biden out of the Oval Office immediately. I do not think the American people are worried about 4 more years of Joe Biden. I think they are worried about 4 more months of Joe Biden, as is the Democrat Party. I will tell you the conversations that our campaign is having could not be more different from the panic and disarray of the Democrats. We couldn't be prouder to have President Trump as our nominee. He has unified and inspired our party. We are fielding requests about endless speculation of who his vice president is going to be, rather than taking questions on if the VP nominee is going to have to replace our nominee. We are having conversations about how much money we're raising. We're talking about which states like Virginia and Minnesota we can flip and where else we can bring President Trump and his winning message to the American people. So President Trump continues to win big on behalf of our movement, our party, on behalf of Jocelyn Nungare, Laken Riley, Rachel Morin, and all the forgotten men and women of our great country.
Oh, Caroline, let me ask you this. Does the campaign want to keep Joe Biden as the nominee?
I don't think the American people or the Democrat Party want to keep Joe Biden as the nominee, but whoever the Democrats decide to run, maybe they select somebody who's more active outside of the hours of 10 and 4 p.m. Maybe they don't, but there isn't anybody that they can put up, as we saw in the recent round of polls, who can beat President Trump. The American people, it's very clear, do not want Joe Biden. They do not want the Democrat Party. My advice to the Democrat Party would be total surrender. Save yourself millions of dollars, do the right thing for the country, sit this presidential election cycle out. The American people are very clear about who they want, and your own voter base is very clear about who they want as well, and who they want is President Donald J. Trump back in the White House.
Yeah, pretty sure that's not going to happen. But let's just put up Vice President Harris. The new CNN poll has President Biden trailing former President Trump. But you look at the hypothetical matchup with Vice President Harris, it's 2 points. That's within the margin of error, 3.7. She is now doing better in a number of polls in the past few days than he is against the former president. Are you concerned about running against Vice President Harris? And there you see the President Biden numbers, 43, 49.
Well, on that debate stage, within the first 2 minutes, it was very clear that Joe Biden's presence brought fear to the American people, and it was bringing comfort to our enemies. You contrasted that with President Trump's performance, which I think brought hope to the American people and fear to our enemies, which is what we want. Look, Kamala Harris, the story that isn't being reported today and every day of the week that ends in Y, is that no one has had more of a front row seat to Joe Biden's decline than Kamala Harris herself. She and the liberal mainstream media in this country, as well as the Democrat Party, have known the truth about Joe Biden's decline for years, and they have allowed this country to decline with it rather than speaking the truth to the American people. Not only is Kamala Harris radical and out of touch with the American people on a host of issues. I remember Kellyanne Conway said on your network one time, Democrats wake up every day and the calendar reads January 6, 2020, and they get in their electric vehicle and get an abortion. That is as radical as Kamala Harris is, but no one has had more of a front row seat to Joe Biden's decline and is more responsible for concealing it from the American people than her.
Okay, Caroline, we appreciate your time. It's going to be interesting no matter what happens. Thanks a lot.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.